We've got a submission here from, well, it's either MR2 Mark II or Mr2 Mark II. Either way, I like your username. You're having an issue at low throttle where pitch starts oscillating. As soon as you give a little throttle, it goes away. If you're having low throttle oscillation, it may be that your min throttle is too low. In your case, that is not the case because I can see here your min throttle is 1100 and your max throttle is 1900. What have you done there? That doesn't make any sense. It looks like you've tried to set min throttle and max throttle to be symmetrical with each other, 1100 and 1900, which is 100 points in from the 1000, 2000 end of the channel that we typically think of. But min throttle does not correspond to max throttle. Min command and max throttle, and I know that's stupid. Why would you not call it max command? If they're corresponding terms, why do they not have the same name? And I apologize for that. I don't know why I'm apologizing for that. I didn't do it. But I know that's dumb. Max throttle is the top of the range that the flight controller will output to the ESC. Okay? So the flight controller outputs a throttle signal to the ESC, and the maximum value it will send is max throttle, and the lowest value it will send is min command. Min command is the value that is sent when the copter is disarmed to stop the ESC from spinning. Min throttle is the value that is sent while the copter is armed to cause the motor to go to idle but not stop spinning. Okay, so I think you've done something weird here with min throttle and max throttle. If you calibrated your ESCs correctly, then it won't have, everything will still work, but by lowering max throttle to 1900, you're giving up 100 points of your throttle range resolution. And there's no sense in not having as much resolution as you could possibly have. There's no downside there. Depending on what ESCs you have, you may actually not be able to use that resolution. I'm looking for what you have, a Vortex ESC, a Vortex Pro 250 copter. So I don't think that has BL Heli S ESCs on it. Standard BL Heli ESCs only have about 250 steps of resolution, and you need about 800 steps from min throttle from min command to max throttle. See, now you got me doing it. In order to achieve that resolution. So actually for your ESCs, you probably are getting all the resolution you could possibly use, but as just a matter of general practice, and especially if you're using BL Heli S ESCs, which have more resolution, then setting max throttle to 2000 and min command to 1000 is a good way to go. And then you set min throttle based on where your motors first spin up. So you slowly raise the slider on the motors tab until the motors just begin to spin. And if they begin to spin at, let's say, 1020, then you would set min throttle at about 20 microseconds higher than that, and maybe more depending on the motors and props you had. But I shoot for about 15 to 20 microseconds as the absolute minimum to avoid the copter dropping out of the air at the end of flips and rolls. All right, so I hope that all made sense. I have videos on how to calibrate your ESCs and how to set min throttle. One I would suggest for you is, you'll have to excuse my slow hotel internet. Clean Flight pre-maiden check and final configuration. In here I go through the process of calibrating the ESCs and setting min throttle. At least I'm 99% sure I do. It's been a while since I watched that video, but you can check that one out. So let's take a look at your black box log. But already the first thing I would suggest you do is you set min command to 1000, max throttle to 2000, calibrate your ESCs, and then go back and adjust your min throttle to get it to a correct value. It'll probably come down, but it'll help your copter fly correctly. But that actually won't affect your pitch oscillation. What you've got here, assuming your calibration is correct, and even if your calibration isn't correct, the default values I think should work out for you and should not cause this issue. You say here that you're in horizon mode for the first flight. Where did I see that yet? For last run is mostly rate mode, first is horizon mode. If you're in horizon mode, then you may need to change the level PIDs. You can't tune a copter first in auto level mode. You have to tune in rate mode first, because the auto level modes rely on the rate mode to do what they need to do. So when the auto level mode says, level out, it's using the rate mode PID loop to make the leveling behavior happen. And that means that if the rate mode PID loop is not tuned correctly, the auto level mode will not be able to be tuned correctly. So assuming that you have decent rate mode PIDs, you may have the auto level PIDs too high, and there's basically just a P gain for both angle mode and horizon mode, and the P gain is too high by default. I know it's too high for many setups on Betaflight 3.0 and needs to be lowered. So you may just want to reduce your auto level strength or your auto level P gain, and there's a separate parameter for angle mode versus horizon mode that you'll want to tune depending on which one you're using. But it may be the case that the auto level PID loop is having an issue, and what you can do to figure that out is you can turn rate mode off. You can turn it off, and you can perform the maneuver, the drop, and you can see if the oscillation goes away. If the oscillation only happens in auto level mode, then it probably has something to do with the PID, the value, the auto level strength, and that's what you should tweak. Let's take a look. I'm going to look at the last run because it's mostly in rate mode, and that's where I would like to start tuning. Now the next thing I see here is that this skyline here, this blue area, shows your throttle value, and I can see that you're not flying very aggressively. And it's going to be hard to do much analysis if your flying isn't very aggressive. You're mostly just hovering, and you can see here that the lines are mostly just not doing anything. So it's very difficult to troubleshoot or to comment on a copter's tuning if there isn't anything really aggressive going on in the flying. Most copters will hover pretty decently. But here's an area where you raise the throttle, and as you drop the throttle, you can see that you're doing a roll. Yeah, you do a roll. Okay, fine. Oh, and you are in horizon mode. Where are you not in horizon mode? I saw it down here that you were in horizon mode. Are you not in horizon mode anywhere? No. Okay, so it's all in horizon mode. All right, fine. So here you're dropping, and I'm looking at your gyros. Maybe I'll zoom your gyros out a little bit, and I'll turn smoothing off. And I just don't see very much. The other thing is I've zoomed all the way out, and your gyro lines are super thin. It makes me think that you've probably got too much filtering. Now let's see. Oh, no, I can't see what your filter values are because you're on Betaflight 281. Maybe you posted that information. Let's see. Gyro LPF is off. Gyro low pass is 100. So that's not too aggressive. I'm really surprised, though, at how thin your gyro traces are. This is like the cleanest copter in the world, or there's filtering going on here that I'm not aware of. That's very strange. Maybe it's just been a long, long time since I looked at Betaflight 281 and I've forgotten what it looks like. I'm really surprised at how thin your gyro lines are. When I zoom all the way out, the lines will get thicker based on how much vibration the copter has. And this would be a really extraordinarily vibration-free copter, almost suspiciously so. So I kind of don't trust that result, but there you go. I don't really see any oscillation. Here you've raised the throttle, you've dropped the throttle. I mean, there's some movement on the gyros, but it doesn't look unusual, or I don't know if I had video, perhaps I would see and interpret it differently, but it doesn't jump out as problematic immediately. If we look at your PID terms, again, here we've got the P and the D term, and they're doing things. The overall magnitude of the D term, which is the yellow line, is not very high. There are some spikes on the P term. Let's zoom in here. We can see here the P term is getting active. You know, these are not strong sinusoidal oscillations. The magnitude is not very big. The magnitude of the D term is almost always less than the magnitude of the P term, the yellow line being the D term and the red line being the P term. Nothing here looks in any way interesting. I'm sorry to say. Actually, just as I say that, here's something that happened. Here's a full throttle descent, and you're doing a roll. Here things get active. We can see the P term working. It's a dynamic move, and the thing is, you're in horizon mode, so there's two PID loops working here, right? I guess as you go to full stick deflection, it'll become rate mode. But I'm not even sure I know how to interpret this correctly because you're in horizon mode, and I almost never look at auto level loops, auto level logs. Yeah. I would say that this is overactive for a roll like this. That we wouldn't normally want to see the P term going back and forth so much during a roll. That normally we would see a strong push into the move. It might go negative to sort of slow the move down a bit, and then it should stay close to the center line. It may go back and forth a couple times, but these sort of very aggressive back and forth might be indicative of excess P gain, but it's so hard to tell because there's nothing else in the trace seems to indicate excess P gain. And especially given you're in horizon mode and you're doing a roll, I would hesitate to judge really. Now we're in rate mode. Yeah, now we're in rate mode. And do we see anything? What was that blue line? Now you're back in angle mode. So yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a lot more to say to you here, especially without video, and your black box log is not super indicative of very much. Here's some P term oscillation. This is getting to be on the level of not just an active P term, but actually more like P term oscillation. But so there's some prop wash oscillation perhaps or something like that. I don't think it's indicative of very much. And you can see here that you were what were you doing? You're hovering, and you drop the throttle a tiny bit. Why did it start oscillating? I really don't know. That's very strange. Yeah, you drop your throttle just a bit, and it starts doing this oscillations. I'm not really sure why though. Maybe that's the thing you're trying to tell me about. Well, I can tell you this. Your problem is not that your P gain is too high. That's for sure. What is your P gain? 7. Yeah. 7, that's not excessive for many setups. And on roll 6, yeah, that's not that excessive. So yeah, your problem is not that your PIDs are too high. I can only speculate that it has something to do with flying in auto level mode. And I would ask you to see if the problem happens in rate mode as well. But there's not a lot of rate mode flying in here, so I'm not sure I could check that. Anyway, I hope that was all helpful. Happy flying.